Hi, good evening. My name is Al Gallo, and I am an AARP Colorado volunteer. AARP Colorado believes the best years begin at 50, and we are out to prove it with our program, The New 50 Plus. It's a mindset that says we're better than ever. As part of our Get Up and Go attitude, we are hosting Wine Walk Wednesdays, classic Burgundies. It's just another opportunity for AARP to encourage active adults to learn more, play more, and exceed all expectations. We can see and feel the trends. People 50 and older, like you and I, are more active, both physically and mentally, than ever before. We're not slowing down. In fact, we are preparing ourselves to do more things of the things that we love. So, so many older adults are exercising and eating right daily. They are taking the time to learn new things and know the importance of life balance, making sure that leisure and fun are significant parts of their healthy lifestyles. In that lively spirit, we welcome you to enjoy our Wine Walk Wednesday webinar. While we hope you learn something new and exciting, we want you to enjoy yourself, relax, and most importantly, have some fun. Please check out all the AARP Colorado has going on at AARP Colorado. We look forward to connecting you. And John is about ready to launch into the webinar. Have a good one.
Welcome to Wine Walk Wednesdays, everybody. This is Classic Burgundy. So excited about this. This is the big launch to spring and a little bit of activity, a lot of freshness in our glass. It's going to be exciting. We're going to break it down and we're going to talk about Burgundy as a whole. The locations, the terroir, grapes, the styles of the regions, the terminology, and global influence that it's had on the world. So where do we start? Where is Burgundy? Well, we start in France, and in general, you're going to find it in the eastern part of France. It's going to be surrounded with continental climate. You'll have Champagne in the north, you have Provence and Rhone in the south, you have Loire and Jura flanking its sides there. And in the cities and the regions in that area, you're going to find Chablis, Dijon, and Beaune in the north, as well as Mâcon, Beaujolais, and Lyon in the south. This is going to be the predominant area that is a little disjointed because you'll have Chablis being the northern part of Burgundy, as well as the Côte de Beaune, Mâconnais, as well as Beaujolais in the south. Included in the Côte d'Or is the Côte de Beaune, Côte de Nuit. A little farther south, you'll find the Côte de Chalonnais, Mâconnais, and farthest south is the Beaujolais. Now, again, there is a lot of regions within this area, so it's going to be a lot of geography. But please let me know what you have questions, have ideas. There's a lot to go over. Sarah, you mentioned Dijon, pardon me, Grey Poupon. Yes, Dijon is famous for a number of things, one being their mustard seeds, as well as their clones of Chardonnay. And again, please, if you have a glass of wine, crack it open. Let's get this going because, again, these are beautiful wines, and it's going to definitely be something to explore with us while we're going through this. And I will, Carol, try and talk a little bit louder. I noticed that earlier here. All right, so going into it, there's a lot of influence, what we call terroir, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But we are going to be looking at all sorts of influence, one being the rivers. And again, you have the Sarine in the north that cuts right through Chablis. You also have the Saône, the Grony, the Canal du Centre, and the Canal de Bourgogne. These are going to be the big rivers that kind of encapsulate and wrap around Burgundy. Let's see. Okay. Just making sure my sound's okay. Now, in terms of the mountains, you're going to also have the Côte d'Or, which is the biggest influence, runs right on the western side of most of Burgundy, except for the Chablis region. You also have Haut-Faline, as well as Massif Central, which is probably one of the biggest regional influences and mountain geographical influence for almost most of the south and the eastern portion of France. So, going into the kind of the fundamental definition of terroir, it encompasses a lot of things. You're talking soil, you're talking topography, climate, as well as the overall environment. Basically, anything that impacts the vines, the grapes themselves. You could be talking about something as subtle as a tree cooling off some of the grapes in the vineyard, or how the vineyard is angled. In this photo here, you're seeing the vineyards kind of in the valley, and right in that, in the middle of that, is called the Roche de Solutre. Now that is a big portion of influence, because it kind of protects the vines. It causes the wind to kind of wrap around and not just cut through the vineyards, and as well as create a lot of solar gain. Again, we're looking at having most of the vines. Ideally, you want basically the Grand Cru and the Premier Cru vineyards being a little higher up, a little more sun exposure, because it is a relatively cold area, especially with the changing temperatures at night. Temperature can drop substantially, and that residual heat will actually make sure that the grape and the vines are healthy throughout the year. So in that, we're looking at soil. So soil type being part of the things that we look at for terroir. In this region, it varies, but it mostly is limestone in the north, and as it goes farther south, it becomes marl and clay, and you have what's called diatomaceous earth. And we talked a little bit about this in the last class, but it's that evolved seabed fossil. You're going to have seashells, different plankton, and it creates this really kind of what we call calcareous soil. It absorbs a lot of acidity, and it actually provides healthy vines, especially when we talk about going north into Chablis. So let's get into some of that continental climate. Again, this region experiences hot summers and cold winters, as well as a lot of rainfall, but closer towards Chablis. Again, it's a lot more influence on the Atlantic. It's wonderful that you guys are going deep into Burgundy too, so I love this. So you got Joseph Drouin, you have Thibault, you also have Louis Bouillot. I love it. I love it. And I'd be really curious if some of you are also drinking Cremant de Bourgogne with us, doing a little sparkling like we did last class. So again, sun exposure, heat retention, it all kind of revolves around the topography. And the topography is really influential and very, very important, because back when the Benedictines were kind of carving up the land, you start to see these plots of vineyards being organized, and they start documenting what each vineyard is going to be doing. And yes, Sarah, Cremant de Bourgogne will be the sparkling of Burgundy. We'll talk a little bit about that, but one of my favorites, and Louis Bouillot is one of those producers, but the style is very easy drinking. It's just as crisp, and it's not as expensive either. It's a very affordable, very approachable. So again, with that topography, the terroir, when those Benedictine monks and the Cistercian monks kind of carved up the land, they didn't just carve it up. They also documented how each area was growing, what the best grapes were growing in that vineyard, as well as the sun, the wind, the rain, what happened in each little plot of land. Again, this is before everybody's Excel sheet. There's a lot of paper and a lot of writing to do. So you had a great amount of documentation on these vineyards, probably the best in the world. Again, derived from Côte d'Or hillsides, varying steepness and sun exposure. It's very important. And this is going to be a great little clip here that you're going to see in this photo that shows, again, the influence from the latitude, where the mountains, the rivers, the humidity, the diurnal shift, again, the diurnal shift being the temperature from morning to night. Does it get cold and freezing at night, and then warm and boiling in the daytime? And I took a little photo here so you could really see the change in the terroir, right? You're going to see some of the cloud cover and the exposure on the right side. And something as simple as that is going to affect the grapes. Again, we're dealing with mostly Chardonnay and a Pinot Noir, but you have different grapes that we're going to go into on the next slide there. That's going to really be the dictated grape of each region, and basically figuring out these ideal plots, which grape goes well in each region. How would you say it? This next one here, this next slide, kind of goes through all the grapes that are allowed in the Burgundy region or Bourgogne. And mostly you're going to have, again, Pinot Noir, but you also have a red grape called Gamay. You will see that a lot in Beaujolais. Yes, 100% Gamay grapes. Love the style, but you also get a couple outliers here. The Beru, the Chessar, the Treseau, and the Sassy. You don't see a lot of it, especially not exported. Definitely wanted to, give that to you as a little bit of information. Now, in terms of the white grapes, we're going to see Chardonnay being the queen or king of this powerhouse style. It is really influential, just as much as Pinot Noir. And kind of right behind there is a grape called Aligote. Now, it's a cross between Pinot Gris, as well as Goya Blanc. In the Bouzeron region, this is the one kind of outlier that you'll see. Sometimes you'll see it in different wine stores. If you do, get a chance to try it. It is bright, it's refreshing, loads of acidity, as well as you'll see a little bit of Pinot Blanc. Sometimes it's for blending reasons. Let's see. Phil, looks like you've got the 100% Gamay. And Ben, looks like yours is as well. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's get into it. The first one here that we have is Pinot Noir. And if you have your glass and you have your Pinot Noir, let us know what you're drinking. I'd love to see, a couple more answers here that are what everyone's drinking. I'm really impressed by everybody's choice of Beaujolais too, and I think we're going to have to revisit that as well. We'll give it a little bit more loving because there is a lot more information to talk about with Gamay, as well as going south of Burgundy into the Rhone and the Provençal regions. Let's see what else. There's a Givry Premier Cru from Allison. Awesome, awesome. Let's see, what else? The Gauchot Pinot Noir. I love it, I love it. So with Pinot Noir, very complex. It's sometimes too thin of a skin, so it has a very delicate structure. That being said, it's very temperamental when they're growing it. And when you smell it, allow for it, the aromatics to really grow. Because we use these kind of bigger, bold glasses, and we pour just a little bit, maybe a third at most, allowing the bouquet to really grow in the glass. Now, we do this as well with Chardonnay, and these being Burgundy glasses, it's really to allow for these aromatics, especially from the Pinot Noir, to kind of fill the glass. So when you stick your nose in, really allows for you to smell all different types of character, different aromas, and different styles. We've got Beauforez. Awesome, awesome. So a little bit of New World Pinot. Let's see. And, oh, no worries, no worries. We're going to get you working on some other wines, Eva. So, again, these are wines that have a lot of history, a lot of culture to it. And we're going to get into Chardonnay, which is our next big grape varietal. Again, you're going to see typically a range from a crystal clear, almost like green hue from the Chardonnays in the north, as well as more of a golden tone in the south. Whereas the Burgundy Pinot Noir styles that are going to be almost like cranberry in hue. They're really bright garnet. When you go farther south, there's a little bit of maceration, so it gets deeper, darker, and more brooding on the palate. But that being said, again, I haven't left you Gamay fans out. This is also the next big grape varietal that is in the south, and also really interesting. We don't think about, how would you say it? We don't think about Beaujolais the region, being known for aging, but they do have their own crus that actually have great life expectancies, whereas classic Pinot Noir and Chardonnay Burgundies tend to last for years, and the longer you let it go, the more like character that builds into it. Again, remember, primary, secondary, tertiary characters and flavors, they're going to really develop these like high salinity, a little salty, a little more character on the palate, especially if they oak age their Chardonnays, which is the style that we get in some of the New World Chardonnays. And the Pinot Noir gets a little bit more earthy, more mushroom-like in character. The Beaujolais, on the other hand, and the Gamay tends to get more tea-like and herbal, almost like sandalwood. So really cool diversity in flavors, all in one region. And again, before they were making Pinot Noir, they were actually making a lot of Gamay in the entire region of Burgundy. And it was until more recently, I should say, that Pinot Noir started stepping up in popularity and really kind of taking a hold. Now, Sarah, you were asking about Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio. Are they the same? Absolutely. Pinot Gris is the French name for that grape varietal, whereas Pinot Grigio, is the Italian style, Italian name and pronunciation for that grape. Gris or Grigio being the term for gray, whereas Pinot Noir is black. And you'll see, actually going back to it here, how dark the color of the skins are. Now, in Oregon, Washington, mostly in Oregon, sometimes they make rosés out of their Pinot Noir, and you start to see this pink hue come out of it. But also, the Pinot Gris has, being a mutation from Pinot Noir, still has this dark color. And actually, when you basically make a white wine out of Pinot Gris, sometimes you can see, if they've macerated it and basically added a little bit more skin contact, that the Pinot Gris becomes pink in color. Julie, you were asking, how do the Burgundy Pinot Noirs compare to those in Willamette and Oregon? So that being said, we're looking at more of a earthier, mushroomy kind of character. It's going to be higher in what we call salinity, so it's a little bit of saltiness in that flavor, mostly on the palate. But you're going to get this flavor, especially in the older styles, that develop not so much of this fruit-forward character. It's very earthy, very secondary and tertiary character. You'll get oak, but you're also going to get mostly this like aged, oxidized flavor that the New World styles like Willamette Valley tend to don't go for. They tend to go for a more ripe character. They preserve the flavor of the fruit. And you're going to get more of a earthier style that's like, I don't know, I guess you would call it like mulch. It's cooler, it's moist. You smell it. It's almost like a woody, like fresh forest floor is what we would call it. So I hope that helps in terms of like comparing the styles. Whereas in New World, Old World Chardonnay, we're going to see a variation in terms of the high salinity in Chablis. That's almost like lime on the palate, as well as going farther south, you have the Montrachet region, Pouligny and Chassigny-Montrachet, that are famous for doing a little bit more oak aging, and they have a little bit more malolactic fermentation that creates this buttery-like character. And who learned from that? Well, you've got Sonoma and Napa who've taken that and run with it. Definitely a big style, and we've got those butter bombs, oaky, rich, almost like a full mouthfeel, almost like a creamy mouthfeel on the palate. So let's see. Laura, you were saying that just open the Jean-Marc Bourgard Renier. Let's see. Does not say the grape. Well, let's see. I will have to get back to you on that one while we go through this to see. Let's see. So going into it, there's a lot of flavors that we kind of go through. And I wanted to describe Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in particular. And the reason why is because they, of all the grapes in the world, actually encompass the most flavors, variety, and diversity. So from the light end, cooler climate, cold weather. You're going to get these strawberry, raspberry, cranberry flavors. And as it gets warmer in that little chart, you're going to see it go into plum and beetroot and tomato, violets, rhubarb, and lilac. Again, it's going to get sweeter on the palate, a little bit more ripeness, also a little bit more residual sugar in the glass, as well as like the colder style, we're going to retain more acidity. Now, in the secondary and tertiary characters, we're going to also notice the kind of evolution of it. So a little bit more oak treatment in the secondary. You're going to go from red licorice, tea leaf, clove, and it gets sweeter to the fennel, vanilla, and baking spices, especially depending on the oak that they're using. American versus French oak. Usually they're going to stick with French oak, but then they can also toast it a little bit more. And when they char the inside of the barrel, it gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter with more of these different tones, like lactones, that make it creamier or more baking spice on the palate. And again, the longer you let it sit in the barrel and more in the bottle, you're allowing for the tertiary characters to pop up. So this potpourri, this dried herbs, leather, game, these are the flavors that as you let it age, they get more and more voluptuous, more earthy, and particularly with Burgundy, it is famous for this. But again, this actually describes most of the styles for Pinot Noir worldwide. So again, cool weather climate, let's say Marlborough, New Zealand, making Pinot Noir in that area, you're going to, or even Hawke's Bay out there, it's going to be a cooler climate. So strawberry, raspberry, cranberry, color is going to be light. It's going to be more delicate. Ben, you're saying, funny, I love the big mouthy word, more intensive reds. But the white, I never really cared for. Chardonnay. Preferred the lighter, fresher whites in summer. Then Chablis is definitely more your style. You want to go cooler climate, and we're going to get into that next slide here for Chardonnay. Because that cooler climate is going to give this brightness and acidity. It's going to be tangy. It's going to have this lovely, like, refreshing aspect. And this is the reason why we use these grapes in Cremant de Bourgogne, which is going to be that sparkling style that is kind of one of the competitive styles to Champagne. And again, with Chablis being so far north, it's right under Champagne. It could literally be part of the Champagne region, but Burgundy kind of took the claim first. And part of that also relates a lot to the Loire region, Champagne, as well as a little bit of Alsace. So let's see. Laura, you said looked it up. Says it's a Gamay from Beaujolais. Okay. So you're going to have more of that lighter fruit style, tea leaves, as well as more of a soft plum or red berry, what we call brambleberry in flavor. And brambleberry are those basically blackberry, boysenberries, red, what is it? Blackberry, red berry, and this almost like a tart acidity in the flavor, but kind of baked, so it has a little bit of sweetness to it as well. Let's see. Definitely have to try some Chablis. And Viognier, where does it fit in? So Sarah, Viognier, we're gonna see more in the south, warmer climates, especially in the Rhone region. They do some beautiful style Viognier, and they do a lot of blending. Sometimes they also field blend it with different reds, so it can be a little tricky. But also you'll see Marsan Roussan blended in that region as well. So this is where we start going into the regions and really defining where is each grape growing, because each vineyard has kind of a respected grape of choice. And it's going to go into the appellation, which we're going to talk about soon here. But when looking at the Chardonnay, take your glass, and anybody who's grabbing a Chardonnay right now, and kind of describe some of the flavors that they're going through. Is it going to be on the cooler side? Is it going to be on the warmer side? And in general, if you smell a little bit of like flintiness, this acacia, minerality is what we're really looking at. This can sometimes also be part of the production and style. as well as the terroir, the soil, the saltiness that you're getting from the grape. Now, as you get more oak-driven styles, instead of stainless steel, you're going to get more of a nutmeg and a nutty-like complexity. Oh, John Back, you were saying, oddly enough, I grabbed a Pinot Noir at the store this afternoon without thinking. I got one from New Zealand. Ah, very good, very good. Please describe it too. Like, let us know what you're trying, because I'd love to compare it kind of mano a mano to the Burgundy that I have, as well as tea leaves for Laura, if you can smell it in that Gamay. And Martha, you were saying best Pinot Noir I've ever had was in the South Island, New Zealand. Ah, Wanaka. I do love cold climate New Zealand Pinot Noir. They have gone as far south in latitude as they could, and actually kind of challenged the norm of how cold you can grow Pinot Noir as well as Sauvignon Blanc, really bringing out this pungent brightness to the fruit that really doesn't exist anywhere else, and really defines terroir, right? Defines how special each area is for each grape varietal, because when we're blind tasting, we really kind of have to know, like, what makes each vineyard special, right? And it becomes very complicated, but there's key flavors, key profiles, especially the reason why I keep talking about salinity and like cold climate acidic fruits really define Burgundy. Let's see. No, New Zealand, definitely not in Burgundy. Let's see. Le Champ de Trois, from David. How do you like that one? Describe it, please. Let me know what you guys are thinking. So again, with this, I get a lot of salinity to it. This one here is going to be Pouilly-Fuissé, one of the regions out in southern portion of Burgundy. It's going to be riper, and I'm getting a little bit more melon, more pear-like on the palate. A little bit of the flinty stoniness to it, but it is warm. You can tell it's a little riper. And on the palate, lacks the tomato, John, but it does have almost like this bright, crisp lime on the palate. So it still retains a lot of the cool climate. The apple is like a green apple, very crisp, very refreshing. Now let's get into the Pinot Noir, actually, and going into those flavor profiles. And for you guys have dived in. Let's see, dove in. For this one, and sometimes I will basically put a little bit of my hand on top of the glass, so it allows for the aromatics to kind of lock in. And so I give it a second, and then I take a big whiff. And yeah, I definitely get a little bit of that mushroom character, earthy, almost leathery component to the wine. Cranberry for sure, raspberry, cherry, almost like a red cherry. And you want it to match. Is it matching? Do you taste the cranberry, leather, cherry, a little bit of that earthiness? I won't say it's leather on the palate, but it does have like a rustic like element, in the flavor profile. And let's see here. John, you're getting a brighter tomato, maybe a more fruity style. Laura, getting a lot of lime and lemon out of your Chardonnay. Some oak, and see what kind of oak you're getting. Are you getting a little bit of that nutmeg? Are you getting more of the nutty flavor like an almond, or even more of a creaminess? And sometimes you can notice it on the palate. It's almost like a butter. So when we take malolactic fermentation, we're taking that malic acid that tastes like lime and bright, crisp apples, and we turn it into malic acid, lactic acid. And the lactic acid makes it creamy, almost like milk. So it's very soft, very supple. And so a lot of our red wines, almost most of them, except for a lot of wines in Virginia that you'll notice, don't do they do malolactic fermentation on the reds. I've come across some that aren't, and they are so acidic, so bright. So in general, we want a little bit of malolactic fermentation, or a lot, depending on the style, on our red wines. But sometimes that is definitely a winemaker's choice on the whites. Doesn't always have to happen, but that is definitely one of those reasons why white wine in general tends to be so crisp, refreshing, because it doesn't always have to have that in style. So going on, we're going to look at the styles again. Now, in the region of Burgundy, we're going to look at three main styles. So we're going to have a dry red, we're going to have a dry white, and sparkling. And the sparkling has the option to be both white and rosé, using these grape varietals, mostly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, depending if it's Blanc de Blanc or Blanc de Noir, right? White of whites or white of red, and that style is going to really develop. It's going to be cool. It's going to be refreshing. It's going to be crisp and clean, but it's going to be more aromatic than some of your other styles of sparkling in France. Let's see. Mark, you said, my favorite Sonoma Pinot Noir with the Burgundy style is Soliste. The winemaker is Michelin star French chef from Lyon. And Le Champ from Rose. This is a deep purple, dark cherry, full body, and not too dry. I love it. I love it. It's it's got a lot of character, a lot of flavor, good mouthfeel and texture. Sometimes the dryness will get very, very almost palate fatigue. It'll make you kind of exhausted when you're drinking it from something like a Cabernet or a Malbec. But Pinot Noir has a very gentle tannin on the palate, and so it allows for it to be kind of beer term called sessionable. You can drink it and drink it and drink it, no problem. You can taste through many different types of Pinot Noir, different Burgundies in general, and don't really lose your sense of taste while you're going through it. So that being said, we're going to get into some of the other styles. And again, we were talking about oak aging and malolactic fermentation. Very famous in this region of Burgundy. It's really kind of iconic and what influenced a lot of the world in terms of how to create wine instead of just making wine. This is really a winemaker's choice, and it allows for the winemaker to kind of guide the wine into a different style, different flavor profile, and also allow for a different aging technique, because oak aging, you're pre-aging that wine, you're giving it more character, so upon release it has a little bit more something than something that's a stainless steel Chardonnay that's going to be crisp, refreshing. You're not going to oak age it, you're going to allow for these like nutty oxidized flavors to really add to the wine. Whereas if it's stainless steel, it's going to be bright, lemony, and it's going to lack a little bit of these flavors until it actually enters oak. So let's see. Sarah, what foods pair best with Gamay Bourgogne wines? So Gamay, classic, I guess you could say, is one that I always joke about, is a smoked quail's egg. And sometimes you could have like a duck confit with it. These are going to be very classic regional pairings for Burgundy, especially with Gamay that has that like tea-like character that's going to be a little bit more tannic on the palate, a little bit more noticeable. So having something like a smoked flavor like the quail's egg really kind of balance that. It's going to add to that earthy character and component. Carol, you sing. Oh, definitely. There's so many pairings with the style for Pinot Noir. Now with Chardonnay with the styles in Chablis tend to go more crisp, right? So we see a lot more seafood pairing, oysters. You won't necessarily see like caviar, that might be a little bit too much, but you're going to see more of these kind of a richer seafood flavor. So lobster, you're going to see crab, different style of crab that either fresh or, cooked in a different type of like, you could actually out here, you could cook it in pasta and give it a real rich, creamy white sauce to it that, Beurre Blanc sauce that would allow for the richness to pair with the oaky style of something like Pouligny Montrachet or Chardonnay Montrachet. So, going into the terminology, there's so much again to go through. So, appellation, again, one of the many, many things that defined Burgundy. And these are what we were talking about with those different vineyards, how they're defining each little area and plot of land. And actually, when you're out there, they actually made these stone walls dividing the vineyards. The monks actually would define it physically in order to make sure that every plot of land was respected and understood. Okay, the vines need to go this way. The vines need to face this direction, and maybe it has a little more sun exposure. Maybe the vines are spaced out a little bit more, so that way they have a little bit more room to grow or less room to grow. So a lot of different decision-making elements going on. But the appellation system was kind of one of Burgundy's big claim to fame. They aren't the only one, but they definitely kind of guided the EU, European Union, in making kind of a regional definition in the style. So again, what is the appellation style? What is it used for? The appellation is kind of the official recognition of that quality of wine as well as the area itself. So when we look at something like Pouilly-Fuissé, we're defining this area and not just saying all of Burgundy, right? We want the vineyard, and the vineyard name itself kind of precedes the importance of the vineyard itself, because sometimes different winemakers can go into a region and actually source those grapes. So there's a great sense of community, but also a level of identity. You have 4 different winemakers using the same grapes from the same region and all coming out with completely different wine styles. And again, a lot of California is starting to learn this, identify this, and really you'll see this translate into different estates and new AVAs, American viticultural areas, that really define the areas that we're starting to grow in. I know like San Diego and Temecula have started defining it. Paso Robles definitely has carved out different areas of the region, defining which grapes, which styles grow best in each area. So let's see here. We're going to go into appellation systems. And again, what are they used for? They also are really important for protecting the region. And a classic example of that is actually up in Champagne, right? This is a region, or the reason why we can't call every sparkling wine champagne anymore. The appellation system protected it nationally, internationally even, and it allowed for only the region of Champagne and a couple grandfathered areas and examples to call themselves Champagne. Outside of that, everybody else has to have their own name. So you have Prosecco, you have and within Prosecco, you have Conegliano Valdoviane, right? You have Cava, you have Sekt from Germany, all different styles that they had to find their own way. But definitely a way to protect the region. And then again, it defines those boundaries that we were talking about, as simple as stone walls saying, hey, this is this area, don't mess with these grapes, Chardonnay belongs here, Pinot Noir on that side, and they will grow differently. Again, it defines and regulates the grape varietals growing in each region, as well as allows for aging requirements. So it allows for each region to kind of say, hey, this works best for our grapes, maybe 6 months on oak or 12 months on oak, and allows for a little bit more stylistic flavor and influence. Let me catch up here. So Sarah, Allison said, always had it with turkey. Definitely agree, especially with that black cherry, raspberry, and floral character. Turkey, Thanksgiving, definitely something that I love pairing it with. Red Burgundy and Beaujolais in particular, but I think it's such a universal style, universal grape. And Sarah, you mentioned we've made beef bourguignon and gone to the store asking for a nice Burgundy wine, often suggesting Pinot Noir. Would there be one that I would particularly suggest? Oh, It's tough, especially in the regions, um, because every style is different. Um, in general, I would recommend by region. And for the most part, if I'm looking for New World style of Pinot Noir, I love to go to Willamette Valley. I definitely love that. You guys were mentioning also New Zealand Pinot Noir being New World style, so anything in particular in that area is always wonderful to have. In terms of Burgundy, I am I am a sucker for. Well, actually, we're going to get into it, but I'm actually a huge fan of Volnay and Pommard. Um, but again, this is where we get into what we call the DO and the GI or PGI. So the denomination of origin as well as the geographical indication. This is where we go a little deeper and we start defining these areas like um, the higher categories of styles, the more articulate the regions. That's why, like for example, in Italy, you see Chianti, Chianti Classico, Chianti Classico Reserva. Those winemaking styles get more and more strict, more specific to alcohol, grape varietals that are blended, as well as oak aging. So let's go into some of that appellation style. So we're going to look at Chablis and dive into it. Again, they have the regional AOP of Chablis. Then you also have the village areas. So then, it'll basically be underneath that. You're going to have Premier Cru and Grand Cru. Now, within Chablis itself, it's kind of a particularity because you're going to have basically Grand Cru appellations within Chablis, but Chablis as a whole kind of is classified as that. So, like for example, you have Forcham as a beautiful region within Chablis. You also have was it? What's one of my favorites here? Actually, it would be. Oh, there it is. Montemilieu. Really cool, kind of hard to find. Bougros is also a really nice region to do and explore. But again, that's where you could do a little tasting of Chablis all on its own within one region of Burgundy and just go style by style, compare different villages. Let's see here. My Pinot Noir paired very well with salmon and green salad with goat cheese. And yes, that goat cheese is perfect with that because you're adding a little bit of acidity, a little bit of a tang, some brightness. And Pinot Noir is great because it's not overly tannic, so it's easy to go with fish because you don't want to pair something that's too tannic with too oily of a flavor. They clash a little bit. And so with that, the goat cheese, especially when the salad, it's going to add a little bit of liveliness and really help enhance that pairing. Let's see, we visited Willamette Valley, Sarah, did a vineyard tour, and you know what? That's some of the best ways to explore. Aged wine and eggshell concrete casks. Yes, super nuanced style of aging wine is in concrete. You're going to find that it allows for a little bit of oxidation with concrete, but it doesn't influence with heavy flavors like the coconut, the nutmeg, the toasted flavors, the vanilla. Concrete aging, which you'll see mostly in New World, but you're going to start seeing more in some of the Old World regions of Europe. Because it allows for a little bit more experimentation because the eggs tend to be a lot smaller, and so you're getting smaller batch wine making techniques. They're going to actually age maybe each plot and then blend them all together in something neutral like stainless steel, so it creates a cohesive flavor. So going into, let's see. So when we started off in the north, we went with Chablis. Then we went a little farther south to the Côte de Beaune. This is the first portion of what we call the Côte d'Or, which is the hillside of gold. So the northern portion, which is the Côte de Beaune, has these villages, famous villages like the Allochet-Coton, Pommard, Volnay, and again, Pommard and Volnay, beautiful Pinot Noirs that I particularly like because they are a little bit more, have a little bit more of a kick to it. But at the same time, you have a lot of white wine coming in from this region. So you have the Merceau, the Pouligny Montrachet, and the Chassigny Montrachet, which created this oaky, rich flavor that we're going to see with malolactic style. Still has bright, balancing acidity, but it's going to have a lot more richness to it, more mouth feel or body, as we call it. So comparing like skim milk to whole milk to like a half and half, it's going to lean closer to the half and half. It's going to be very, and it does. We're not talking flavor. We're just talking about the weight and almost like this the richness in the palate. So as we go a little farther south, we're going to see the Côte de Nuit, and we're going to get into more Pinot Noir territory. This is now a lot more. You're going to have Fichin, Gevrey-Chambertin, Chambon-Musigny, Vougeot, Von Romani, and Nuit Saint-Georges. And actually, Nuit Saint-Georges is a special place for me too, because it is that earthy, mushroomy style that really like a bold character flavor. Whereas I find that Fichin is going to be a little more rustic, a little lighter in cranberry. But again, you'll notice these flavors kind of varying. The cooler it is, the farther north it is, it's going to have a more crisp, fruit-driven flavor. The warmer it gets going towards the south, it's going to be rustic, mushroomy, earthier on the palate. And I want to show you some of these. We're going to go into this next slide to, again, just briefly go over the geography of it, because it is a lot of what we were talking about. So again, I expanded the little map here for what we're looking at. So again, in that top little corner there, you're going to see is Chablis and the regions of Chablis. Then with the Côte d'Or, you're going to have a big portion of it is that blue area there. That is the Haut Côte de Beaune and Haut Côte de Nuit. You go a little farther south, and it starts to become the Mâconnais region, as well as the if you go as far south, you're going to see a little bit of the Rhone area at the bottom there. And let's see. Let's go into a little bit of history and mix it up. Again, this region has over 2,000 years of history, established and started making planting grapes and making wine out here by the Romans. Now, after that, the Dukes of Burgundy started defining certain rules. So they are the ones that kind of kicked out Gamay, moved it towards the south, and started defining Pinot Noir, which actually was an anomaly out there. It was a mutation within the field. So it really is kind of the grape of choice for Burgundy, because it was made out there. Then, as the religious orders started to define these areas and really use it both as for food as well as viticultural styles, you're starting to see definitions from the Benedictines, the Cistercians, and eventually the Trappists. And going into that, let's look at the architecture in this region, because it is substantial. And we'll briefly go through how you went from the Romanesque period in the 800s. Then you had the Cluny Abbey #3, which we had briefly talked about in the last class, which really is kind of the largest architecture, almost rivaling St. Peter's in its stature. It's basically, it was an epic creation. Then you also had in the 1100s the Gothic style, which like the Notre Dame. We're also going to see a couple other modern ones that are still still standing. Then the Tudor style is more the rustic village architecture in that area, as well as the Northern Renaissance and Beaux Arts. So kind of in the background here, we see the Gothic style. Now this is Auxerre, which is one of the regions near Chablis in the north. And you see two giant Gothic cathedrals right there, kind of flanking the river, well, actually on one side of the river. As we go, this is kind of a closer look at Auxerre, and noticing how they have these these flying buttresses, building layers and layers. It's almost like a wedding cake, right? It just allows for this town to kind of um, cloister up. It just builds into the this pyramid of architecture. Then in different town or different areas in Burgundy, you still have kind of the rural side of it, the Auger, as well as the Tudor style in Dijon up there in that top picture. And then in Lyon, you have this more modern architecture, and this is where you start seeing these plazas being built for recreation. Um, and this is the Hospice de Beaune, which is more of the Beaux Arts style, a little bit modern. And I bet you've seen something very similar in California. I definitely feel like we've seen something like this in Temecula. Um, Sorry for that. I think it was Temecula and a couple other regions in California. You're noticing this style of design, kind of decorating with tiles on the roof and making this almost like quilt-like visual expression. And you have the town of Macon, which is a little bit more medieval and a little bit more fortified. You can definitely see some of the Roman influence in this area. So, speaking of influences, let's talk about and kind of wrap up with the global influence. How did that affect the world, right? We talked about a couple of regions. We talked about the different towns and the cities within Burgundy, but and it gives you a little bit of an idea, a feeling, not just looking at vineyards and vines over and over again, but I like showing the architecture to give you a sense of terroir in terms of where the people are living and what to experience and what to expect. Now, with going into some of the best regions of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in particular, you're going to see, like in California, the Sonoma, Napa, Monterey, especially in Anderson Valley, as well as Santa Barbara, which is kind of the little elbow of California, right? Beautiful winemaking regions for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Now, Oregon, you have Willamette Valley, especially in Chehalem Mountains, Yamhill, Carlton, and McMinnville, as well as New Zealand. Again, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, and Nelson. And Australia, you have Riverland, Riverina, Murray-Darling. So much, right? Italy, you have Lombardy, Veneto, Trentino, Alto Adige, and Friuli, Venezia, Giulia. Chile, you have Limari Valley, Casablanca Valley, and Biobío. So many people, so many regions influenced by this style. And speaking of influence, let's get an idea of what you guys are talking about and thinking. And I love to wrap up with some questions that you guys might have, because I know that was a tremendous amount of information to go over. And I'd love to see, a couple questions that you guys might have about maybe the grapes, the style, maybe even the regions, and what to expect from different international styles of Pinot Noir. Yeah, anybody. And just to kind of wrap up while we're doing some of these questions is to say merci beaucoup à tous. I want to thank you guys all for joining me here. I think this was a fantastic, rendition of basic Burgundy 101, going through Chardonnay and Pinot Noir at its best. I love kind of exploring these grapes with people because there's so much flavor, so much history, and so much to kind of go over and explore, right? And as you could see with the architecture, it's not all one style. It's not all, one grape. It's basically both the city and the material and the grapes. They're all crushed, and the expression is painted on the canvas, and really kind of exploring what we're going to experience, what we're going to taste, and what we're going to see. And Julie, yes, definitely helpful and fun. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it, and you gals out there. Like Burgundy is definitely something to explore. Ben, it is robust Pinot Noir. It is it true, or is it just? Oh, sorry. Seems like Burgundy is more robust than domestic Pinot Noir. I would say that domestic Pinot Noir is almost voluptuous. It's a depending on which country it's being grown in, it can be bold but it can also be very like perfume like in style, whereas the Burgundy is more rustic, robust. Those flavors are going to be a little bit more austere, and the acidity is going to make it so it's very food friendly. Whereas New World styles are going to be a little bit more ripe and a little bit more luscious on the palate. Um, and Eva, definitely, it's always a pleasure sharing this knowledge. It's fun, right? Because this is a communal event. Drinking is like kind of like eating apple pie, right? You got to share it. It's definitely an experience to have with others. Sarah, really enjoyed this webinar. Love it. I'm so glad you guys are and gals are here joining us. The topic for the next one, I think we're going to go into kind of almost like we were talking about like veranda wines and barbecue wines. We're going to get ready for the summer and go a little bit more bold, a little bit more flavor. And we're going to see some more Rhone Valley wines as well as a couple others. And if you have some ideas, shoot them out to us. I definitely would love to see what you guys have or are interested in. Let's see. Laura, love to do this more. Definitely a pleasure. I'm so glad you all joined us for Wine Walk Wednesday. This was fun, and I hope you guys all got a lot of information out of this. Let's see. Sherry and Jeff, thoroughly enjoyed the class. You know what? Thank you. Thank you all, actually. This has been fun. And let's see. Actually, Christy, you were asking, are there any Colorado vineyards offering Pinots or Chardonnay? I don't know, to be honest. And it's tricky because actually, I'll have to do a little bit of research, and then I'm actually going to make a handout for you guys to explore some of the wine or vineyards and or wineries in Colorado, because it's going to take basically a little bit more research, especially on my end. We don't see a lot of it, and I'd like to learn more because we definitely have a winery, not a vineyard, but a winery in almost every state, if I'm correct. And so it's a lot to cover. 50 states. Can you imagine all having a different winery? And I'd love to learn more too about Colorado vineyards. Let's see. Wrapping it up. So glad. Yeah, I think that's exciting. You know, I definitely like to add that on. Cab Franc from Grand Junction. Ben, awesome call out here. So yeah, and again, thank you guys. Thank you all. I definitely want to explore this with you. We're going to go bold summer wines next class. And let's thank our host, AARP Colorado. Couldn't do it without you. Really appreciate them for being here with us, allowing for us to kind of explore together, taste together, and experience new ideas and flavors. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. And again, please let us know if there's any more classes that you have kind of you're basically yearning to learn for. There's so much information, and I definitely want to be able to cover it with all of you in a way that everybody's learning, as well as cover some of the things that are a little bit more esoteric and also kind of mainstream, so that way we all have a good kind of a wealth of knowledge for each region, each style that we study or learn. Awesome. Let's see. What else? We got a couple others here. Please explain the difference between Chablis and Pinot Gris. Yeah, absolutely. So Chablis still going to be 100% Chardonnay, whereas Pinot Gris is going to be, it can be from any region really. We're looking at Italy. We're going to look at Alsace in France. We're also going to be looking at like Trentino Alto Adige. You also have some New World examples like Oregon, Washington will make this, mostly Oregon. And it's going to be a softer flavor profile. You're going to get more pear. It's going to be more, what we call phenolic bitterness. When you taste the white wine and it finishes on the palate, right? Is it a little bit bitter? you're going to have a couple of grape varietals that do that, but Pinot Gris is definitely one for that. Whereas Chablis will be cold, bright, acidic, but it will have that bitterness. So let's see. Show up every month. Although I know there's some cooking classes out there too that are kind of interwoven with ours. So definitely check those out. Check out all the events on AARP Colorado. Don't miss out and keep up, especially you've got some awesome people and staff here working very, very hard for you guys to explore and taste. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and I appreciate you. Have a wonderful evening. And again, thank you all for joining us. Until next time.